very animated discussion, Richard. But let's talk about the concerns that the industry may have, particularly in the business process outsourcing.
Okay.
And, AI has come up, it's been coming up for many years now. But where is AI now in the industry? How is it disrupting and that sector? And then maybe more on your part, right? How is it changing the type of people that you look for to fill the growth that these companies are the skills that these companies need to grow?
Sure. Well, it's changing because the low-level work is disappearing.
Okay.
Right? Who needs that,
right.
really? But we got to move up, see it as an opportunity, because the opportunities are going to be lots for higher level skills. So, as an example, it used to be that people would call in and say, what's my phone, how much do I pay for my phone bill? That one's going to disappear.
Sure.
But the call that says, well, I got my phone bill, and how do I pay less money in the future? How do I save money on my phone bill?
Sure.
That's something that ChatGPT or other AI is going to have a really hard time answering. But someone can go through and figure out, okay, well, how can you? So it's a more social opportunity and more higher level skills.
Right, but on the search part, have you seen significant changes in maybe the skill sets that are desirable? Or is it more of an incremental change that, you need this, that, or we haven't made that leap yet from what you've seen?
It's an incremental change.
Yeah.
It'll take time, but that same thing has been happening for a long time.
Right.
Automation, they used to call it, now it's AI.
Sure.
It's just a newer, fancier version of the same thing.
Well, you were saying a while ago that what a promising development is how these sector is growing outside of Metro Manila and going in the provinces.
Yes.
That's a good sign. But do you think that AI will somehow disrupt that? Because, or are the skills coming from the regions comparable to what we're seeing now from Metro Manila? So they don't fall in that lower band of, skills that you were talking about that may disappear, that were still safe, right? And
sure. Let me make why it's not just safe, but I mean a bigger opportunity. Most large companies, large global companies, have already outsourced. They have large operations and so forth. Mid-sized companies, SMEs, of which there's about 30 million jobs in the world, so huge, much larger than are employed in large companies, but they've just started. So think they're at the very early stages, and they're often, an example was I heard a friend of ours describing there was two big Australian guys that run a real estate agency in Australia, and they have a couple of assistants in Philippines. So these guys came, they're 6'5", big, tall and big, wide, right? And this little Filipina who's 4'10", who they adored, was their main person, helping them tremendously, right? Now that is a job that cannot be outsourced to ChatGPT because it's very personal.
That personal connection,
The personal connection. 1 minute she's doing some social media, next she's doing a lease agreement, and then a purchase and sale, and then all of this kind of stuff. So these jobs are much less standardized, and it seems to me impossible yet. For years will they ever be AI'd and outsourced to anything else.
Right, and that brings me to another set of questions I want to ask about this, the talent pool coming from abroad, coming to the Philippines. I know you work in that space as well. You mentioned tourism as one of the areas that you said that was interesting and growing in the Philippines. What are some of the concerns you get from the people you look at or that you hire and that maybe have not visited Asia or don't know about the Philippines so much? What are their concerns? How do you talk them through it? And it's no question that they, once they get here, that they enjoy themselves, right? But I'm sure I've been hearing this. That they have some concerns about, maybe if they haven't been to Asia at all, that they hear all things in the news, right, that tend to be overwhelming negative.
True.
But they come here, it's a totally different thing. But what are some of the concerns that from people that you hear about that don't know much about the Philippines and Asia?
If someone is from some remote, Wyoming or New Brunswick or something, they don't know anything about anything else. Then you have to talk through. Gladly, there's not as many of those as there used to be. One problem that I've heard repeatedly is, because newspapers like yours, high quality, the English is impeccable and so forth. So whenever you need to fill up space in North America or Europe or whatever with some English news, you only put, in some newspapers you want to have some scandal and some negative thing, typhoon,
some clickbait,
so you drop it in. You don't do that with news from in Thailand or Indonesia because the English won't be impeccable and you have to translate it, and it's a hassle. But it's easy to just drop in a few articles from Philippines when you need something to fill up the space. So that gives us a bit of sometimes a negative bias, I think, there among some people. But I think these days that's going away. People are hearing good things. Virtually everybody these days knows Filipinos in their countries, across Europe, everywhere. So I think they give a good representation for the country overall.
Well, let me try to refine the question a bit, because you were talking about tourism as a growing sector in the country. That's a major program of the government, to develop that sector. And I'm seeing that there are a lot of expats, from major hotels, even chefs and, other workers in restaurants coming to the Philippines, which are all good, right? But do you think that will continue? And how are we doing to attract some of that talent versus, say, Vietnam or Indonesia or maybe even Singapore? Where do we excel, right? And where do our neighbors do better than the Philippines?
Yeah, that's a good question. Good question, Clint.
I mean, maybe talk about from your own, I suppose, from experience, right?
For tourism, if you want to talk about that, everybody in the world is mind-boggled because wherever you go, on a cruise ship or...
It's always Filipinos,
Always Filipinos, Mauritius, and all over the world. Canada, you walk into a hotel and you're talking to Filipinos. So with Filipinos has... 10 times the numbers of beaches because it's an archipelago and nice weather and smiling people. It's only a matter of time until the tourism industry here, becomes twice that of Thailand, Malaysia, and whatever country you want to point to. They just don't have the comparable infrastructure and people.
But what about the other things that maybe an expat would look at? Pay, for instance. How do we pay compared, say, to others in Asia? Or is that something that we're competitive in? What are the other perks do they look at? And housing and how do we compare to our neighbors? Where are we doing well, and where do we need to look at to improve?
Okay, so your question is about the expats coming
to the Philippines, right? So, for people looking from North America, Europe, looking to work in Asia, maybe even Southeast Asia, I'm sure they're looking at different opportunities in the region, right? What would they be looking at? Is it just simply pay, or are they looking at maybe other things, other perks? And how are we doing in providing those incentives for them to come here, bring that talent here versus having them, losing them to Vietnam, losing them to Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia?
What I understand speaking to the different operators is Philippines is seen as it must be on your resume.
That's interesting.
Because wherever you go, you're going to work with Filipinos. Spending a few years here as a head of F&B, food and beverage, or something like that, running a hotel, is a positive thing. You can then go anywhere with credibility, and because everywhere you'll be working with Filipinos. So yes, and in terms of income, and benefits, there's standard worldwide standards for that. So
so if you're a particular guy with a certain skill set, you're less protected wherever you go. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
I see. Does that apply also to the Philippines, to maybe Metro Manila versus provinces? Because I would think maybe some of the perks in, say, maybe working at Shangri-La Boracay would be more than working in Shangri-La BGC. I don't know, maybe from my perspective, right? But is that how expats see it?
Well, yes, and okay, that's a good way. The expat employment contract has changed over the years. It used to be they would provide, you know, the full housing, maid drivers, and expensive schools for the kids. Now they tend to give, you know, an income. This is your income. Okay. We'll give you an allowance for housing. You spend it as you wish. Okay. And have fun with the posting. It's more of a, yeah, it's more like a regular employment situation. Yeah.
Right. So if it's not the pay, or it's not whether Metro Manila or the provinces, is there any other consideration you think that expats would be looking at if they're choosing to work somewhere in Asia? What would draw them here in the Philippines, other than what you said, that it needs to be in their resume somehow? In other words, I'm trying to figure out, you know, what our selling points are, I suppose. That's what I'm trying to get at, right? And then, you know, maybe what our weak points are relative to our neighbors that we need to look at and improve.
Yeah, it's a good question. The selling points are, one, Philippines is seen as, again, one of the world's great growth opportunities. I know sometimes Filipinos get this idea that everybody looks down on them, but the rest of the world sees Philippines as a different way, especially in tourism. Okay. Because they all work with, so that's one thing. The other thing that keeps them here, I hear a lot, is Filipinos are interested to meet international people and get to know them and so forth, and become friends and all this kind of stuff. Expats in other countries often have the situation where most of their friends are other expats from other countries.
Right. They tend to keep to a small group, right?
Yes. Yeah. And they have a hard time making friends in other countries. Partly it's language related, but partly it's just a different culture.
So I take it it's not the problem here.
That is that is definitely not the problem. The problem here is, I mean, in a funny way, but is if the guy suddenly meets a girl, he might break up his family or something like that. So that's sometimes, but
that's a different story.
It's a different story. It's a good thing. It's not but yeah. So here it's an opportunity. We have a lot of things going for it here.
All right. Well, on that note, I think we'll have to take another break, Richard, and we'll be right back. Please stay tuned to Business and Politics.